welcome to Web Fest and our second panel of the day, Why Diversity Works. To introduce our panel, please welcome our moderator for this one, Lisa Gifford.
Hi. Thanks for coming. And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our panel. And on the end here, we have Babi Isako. And and in the middle here, we have Christin Baker. And next to me is Ted Shiress. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do. So, before we start, where should we start? Should we start with you, Ted?
Hi, I'm Ted Shiress, and I'm a lesbian.
Yes. My name's Christin Baker, and I have cerebral palsy. No, I'm sorry. No, this is Ted, and you go ahead.
I'm the one with CP,
Yeah.
if you couldn't tell. Basically, I'm a stand-up comedian. For almost a year, I started making my own web series, Cynic, which is about what a deviant I am, more than my disability.
I'm Christin, and I'm the lesbian. And I run a website called tellofilms.com, and we are a distribution site that makes content specifically for the lesbian community. Our content is behind a paywall, so people subscribe to our content for American dollars, $4.99 a month. And we have 14 original series on our channel, and we've been around for about 5 years now.
Hi everyone, my name is Babi Isako. I'm a writer and creator of an online series called Venus vs. Mars. I also come from a background of theatre, so I'm used to writing. I've been writing for nearly 6 years now. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And I'm going to start with you, Babi.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about Venus vs. Mars, why you had that specific idea, why you wanted to make that series?
Venus vs. Mars is a romantic comedy based on a young female living in London. The reason why I actually created the series at first is because I felt like I wasn't being represented on television. I felt like a lot of the roles on television based on Afro-Caribbean females was just very stereotypical. So I felt like I had my own story I wanted to tell. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something funny. And I went ahead and wrote Venus vs. Mars. Yeah.
And same question, Kristen. You have networks, so you have a range of series. If you can just tell me a little bit about why you wanted to do that, what kind of things you were trying to get out there with the series.
Sure. So when my co-founder and I first kind of conceived of Tello, we were really tired of having a lack of lesbian characters that we saw in mainstream. And we found that the web was really this amazing place where you could find lesbian content, but you had to really dig for it. And so at first we were going to be like the YouTube for lesbian content, because if you typed in like lesbian in the search engine, you just got like a whole bunch of like chicks making out. And we were like, well, we kind of want to see stories and like see like us represented on a series, on a show. And so at first we thought, oh, this is great. We will make a ton of money through advertising, and we're going to get a ton of hits, and it's just going to be fantastic. And that did not happen. And so we very soon realized that because we were not just like a niche, we were a niche of a niche, right? So you have the LGBT community, but then you have like the lesbian community, and so we're like that much smaller than all of the like the LGBT group. And so about 2 years in, I thought, we need to put this behind a paywall, which was not what anyone was talking about. But I thought, if I get 10 people who give me $3.99 a month, that will be more money than I have ever made on ad revenue or trying to get people to watch. And at that time, too, I really didn't want to be famous or get a show on a network. I just wanted to make content for people like me. And so the most important thing was to try and monetize that. And I'll just briefly mention, too, the way our content works is we are a producer of content, but we also distribute. So if someone makes a show that is relevant to our audience, and we distribute it, we pay out a percentage of our subscription fees. So 100% of our subscription fees go back to content providers based on their number of views. So the more views you have, the more money you make. And so we're hoping that we either A, help someone, pay for the content that they've made, and B, hopefully make more that they'll put on our channel, because all of our stuff is also exclusive. So.
Basically, I'm a stand-up comedian, a bit of a niche one. My main trouble is disability groups don't go for me because I'm too, abrasive, and I don't mind saying having a disability sucks. Basically, disabled groups don't like that. Non-disabled groups see disability in a performance, they automatically think it's disability related, which it isn't always. So I haven't got very far on the circuit, so our idea was to create Cynic ourselves, which is a web series in the style of Cabrera Enthusiasm, where I play myself cranked up, so very deviant, very cynical, I swear an awful lot. The opening scene to the very first episode, my helper comes to make me breakfast. I'm naked in bed, hungover, and I tell her to F off. And the series continues in that direction.
Actually, your point, Ted, kind of leads me to what I wanted to say next, or ask you guys, was how you were received, how your content was received by, people, by disabled people, or by LGBT groups, or by, people of colour.
Disabled individuals really go for it. I've had a few that love it, but disabled bodies won't go anywhere near it. I've asked charities, look, this may be cynical, but sorry, I have a cough. Said to charities, look, I'm making something I believe in. Help me.
Yeah.
This is a disabled guy doing what he believes, even if the character is a bit of a so-and-so, but still far too worried about letting people see disability in that way, which is why I make him myself with the help of my gang.
So we've really received a lot of mostly positive comments from the lesbian community. I think what we can find kind of difficult, again, is because we're behind a paywall. It's just really hard to get people to pay for content online. So there's a lot of free content out there. So there's a really great group that understands, if I give you money, then you can make more content for me. And then we have some people who will come on, and get a monthly subscription, and then they're out because they don't want to give any more than the $3.99 or $4.99 that we charge. So for us, it's just really hard to get people to sort of pay for content. The one time that we did get a negative comment, we have what our first series is called Cowgirl Up, and in it there's actually a Native American tribe that's completely made up, and it's a comedy, it's a very broad comedy, and so we sort of paint very broad strokes, shall we say, with some Native Americans, or Indians as we call them. And so we actually got a few negative comments about sort of making fun or painting them with broad strokes. luckily the co-creator is like part Cherokee. And so whenever we had anyone come on and say like, that's a really horrible representation of the Native American community, I was like, Ainsley, will you please respond to this? And so she would get on and have this like really great response about, you know, things being funny and being able to laugh. And then like inevitably someone would like respond back and be like, oh, I love your work on South of Nowhere. And so it was, you know, it was kind of gone. But that's been the only negative comments that we've had.
On my side, I joined forces with Purple Gecko Productions, and they were an up-and-coming production company at the time. And at first, we only created a pilot episode because we didn't know how people would react. We didn't know how people would receive the show. So I remember literally we uploaded the show. It was really late at night, and we put it on Twitter, you know, watch this new show. And then literally by the morning, I had a BlackBerry, and my phone literally crashed because that's how many new subscribers we were getting on the channel. And it was really, we actually had a positive response because what people were saying, you know, we haven't seen something like this been done in the UK, you know, it's a great story, we want to see where Venus goes, it's funny. So we actually had a good response. Obviously, when you put things on YouTube, you always have one or two negative comments, but that comes with it. You put yourself out there, you'll get positive and negative comments. But, you know, so far we've had positive results from the show, so.
That's really good. I mean, from my experiences with Threesome, which is the web series, one of the characters in the series is gay man. And there's a play that the series, I wrote first and the series came out of the play. And when we did the play, we had an overwhelmingly positive response from gay men because the play deals with a guy coming out for the first time. And then there was one guy who came up to me, or he wrote me a very long email. And part of that very long email was, you know, how dare you write about someone coming out when you're a straight white woman who can't possibly know what that feels like. And first of all, I was like, well, you know, making assumptions, but whatever. But it was the case of actually the director of the play was a gay man. And this guy's comments were generally around, you know, you don't know what it's like to come out and you've made him the villain of the piece. And how dare you suggest that gay men are villains? And I remember actually our director responded to him and said, look, you know, I'm a gay man and I find it actually quite insulting that gay men can't be villains. Why can't we be villains? We're not all happy and sunshine. You know, some of it can be dark too. So there was this kind of perceived thing of because you're not that person, you're not in that club, that you can't possibly write about that. And I think there's nothing better than if you're in that situation to be able to write about it, because we all write from our own experiences. But I think as well, people need to think more creatively about, well, okay, I can write out experiences outside my own. I mean, I don't know how you guys kind of feel about that, about people writing stuff perhaps that they don't have personal experience of.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. As a comedian, I go to a lot of comedy gigs, and if I'm on stage before another act that talks about disability, everyone in the room starts looking at me to check if it's okay to laugh. So, no, you've heard what a deviant I am. Don't trust my judgment on anything. I don't mind what you find funny, and you should know without a disabled person telling you what is and what isn't funny.
Yeah.
Which is what I feel, because I might be wrong. I find some awful things hilarious.
You know, I think we're looking at a project right now that's obviously all of our projects are lesbian or have a lesbian character, and one right now is written by two straight men, and they've written really wonderful, like three-dimensional, amazing characters who are lesbians. And one of the things that I think we always want to make sure is it doesn't really, as long as it rings true, so as long as you have at least someone there who can say, like, my director was a gay man and here was my experience. Because I think if you do have too much homogenized thinking, then you might not get the characters right. And so you do want to make sure that you're bringing in someone who is, a straight white male, or someone who is, Asian or gay, or diversity of thought only helps you enrich the project. And so it's not that we will say, like, only a lesbian can write a lesbian character. But, as long as there's some kind of coming from a place of truth, people will be able to understand that. Like, when a straight white guy writes and directs a lesbian movie. And you can just tell, because there's, like, not a depth, in my opinion, there's not a depth that comes with that. But usually when they have a best friend who is a lesbian who can, like, watch and say, this is true, or this is not true, or this is... So as long as it comes from a place of truth and experience, that's all that really matters.
I agree. I feel that anyone can write different characters, but it depends on how authentic those characters are, how relatable they are. What I found was that people that were writing for black roles on TV was being very stereotypical. So I felt like you should have have more diverse writers there to write different characters. I think myself, for Venus vs. Mars Season 2, which we haven't released yet, there's a lot of Caucasian actors in it, and I'm writing for them. But that's because my team, it's not that we're all from ethnic background, we're all very diverse. So I feel like it is important to have someone there, depending on the character you're writing for. So if it is disability, have a disabled writer with you on the team. If it is for LGBT, do the same thing. So I think it's okay for anyone to write for different characters, but make sure you have people on your team that allow your writing to be authentic, and it is not just being stereotypical, one-sided, but it's being quite open. So
and it's research as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Going out researching kind of moves into actually, before I go on, is there any questions so far? Any points anyone wanted to make? I'm trying to make this sort of as interactive as possible, so if you do have anything, I'll keep stopping and checking if anyone wants to ask anything. I was going to move into actually the whole thing about the niche markets versus the mainstream media, and ask on your thoughts about that, like reaching a wider audience with your work, and how you feel about moving into mainstream media, because I think we talked a lot during the festival about niche and how the web is so good at reaching a niche market. And do you feel like that is the great thing about working on the web, is that you can reach those audiences that are not being reached? And how do we push that forward? How do we get that out there? How do we start to influence the rest of the industry and make them wake up to that? Should we start at the end?
Okay. Basically, I think putting your stuff on web is amazing. It's one of the best things, because I feel on my side of things, we've had people from Germany come down to interview me. We've had people from France, America. So once you put your work on web, it reaches out all over the world. And I feel like you're starting to create a noise about yourself, and people will start to pay attention, because what they'll start realizing is that we're now getting a bigger audience of people watching stuff on web than they are on television. I mean, we do want to have the effects of having a bit of influence on mainstream TV, because when you put your stuff on web, you do want to have a bit of that influence. But on web is where you have your own voice. You can be as creative as you want to be. You have no limits, and you can really put your own voice out there. And I feel like eventually TV will start to take notice, and they are, because at the moment you see a lot of TV channels now bringing in quotas, trying to reach these different audiences, because they realise now there's a whole group of filmmakers going online, and there is an audience for it. So that's the positive thing about being on web, because you are creating your voice, and I feel like mainstream are starting to take notice. So
yeah, I think the sort of that open network model has really done well for niche audiences. For so long we've had, like, and I'm going to totally say this, like the man, right? Like the straight white man. Sorry, Ted. Who has made decisions as to, like, what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. And we're going to, like, if you want to see this program, it's going to be on, Channel 4 at 8 p.m. And if you don't see it then, you're not going to be able to see it. And now we have this, like, network of content providers that it's like now you guys have a choice to watch what you want to watch, when you want to watch it, on what device you want to watch it on. And so what that does is really opens up the ability to make your own decisions. And so what that has allowed is this wonderful array of people that can make content for what like they want to watch. And I'm very specific on Tello. If I don't want to watch it, we kind of don't put it up. And so this is great. Like, I'm a decision maker, so y'all can suck it. Like, if you want to watch it, give me your money. But you can do that too. Every single person in this audience has the ability to go out, and if like you love people that wear, flannels and work boots, make your web series about people that wear flannels and work boots, and you will find an audience somewhere out there. And I'll give like a super quick example. So we're able to monetize the web with very few, I don't want to say very few subscribers, but compared to what YouTube numbers are and probably Vimeo numbers are, we're able to make web series and not put it on my credit card or not, come out of my personal money, but with our subscriber funds. That's like pretty awesome. And that's something that, a lot of people are trying to figure out. I have a colleague who is making something, and I know where, I know where the lesbians are. I know, like, what websites they go to. I know what they read. I know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I know what parties they like. Like, I'm going to go to Dinah Shore because that's where the lesbians are. But a friend of mine has a show called Poop Notice. And it's a takeoff on Burn Notice, which I don't know if you guys have seen it as a USA show. He doesn't have nearly as many views as I do, but his audience is like everyone. Like, everyone would want to watch this because it's a funny take on like Poop Notice, and it's about like his kids, and he's a dad. He has so many more potential audience people than I do. But if you really think about it, he's a niche as well. So you guys, everyone is a niche. Like, he is doing a parody on a show called Burn Notice. There are fandoms for Burn Notice. There are fandoms for parodies. So find your niche. Like, find that group that loves what you want and find out where they are and let them know that you're out there. Like, it's unbelievably important to, like, if you love zombie movies, there are so many, like, fandoms who love zombie movies. Go out to the message boards, to the bloggers, and tell them that your project is out there, because everyone has a niche. Like, we're like the cast of Glee right now, right? Like, standing up here. But, like, everyone has this particular niche. Like, if you're a straight... Come on, Ted! We're going to do a song and dance soon. Don't even. But, like, even if you're sort of the majority person, like, your project has a niche. Like, there's an audience who wants to know that your stuff is out there. You just have to find them and figure out who they are.
Regarding what you're saying in terms of niche, I feel like, for example, our show, our audience is not just Afro-Caribbean females or males. Our audience, anyone can actually watch the show because it's just a romantic comedy. It talks about dating, it talks about love, finding the one, relationship. So I feel that anyone can actually watch the show. It's just that the characters are what makes the show different. But it's like, any show we'll watch on TV right now, it's just that the characters make the show different, but the stories are very relatable. Mm-hmm. So I feel like as long as people can relate to your story, you don't have to just be a niche. Anyone can watch the show. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what makes web incredible, because then you got your audience of everyone to watch it. So
the sad thing about especially commercial TV is it's a program's number one mission to sell the adverts.
Yeah.
Commercial TV is about the adverts. The programs are secondary. So sadly, people like us will have to admit that maybe a comedy about the swearing, angry, disabled guy isn't gonna sell millions of adverts for Ariel washing powder or something. The good thing about the web is you don't have that outlook. It's not your job to sell adverts, but it's also so much harder to get people interested in you. So it is a double-edged sword, but with perseverance, I'd say yes, the web is much better for niche material.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, you know,
Well
niche.
said,
Sorry, did I take this?
Yeah, no.
Sorry, did I cut you off?
No,
midstream?
I said well done.
Yeah.
that was a good answer.
Well done.
I think the thing with niche, and I like putting niche in brackets or whatever. The thing with niche audiences is that they can get quite passionate, I think, about your product. And that can help reach the wider audience too, because if they're passionate about it and they're telling all their friends, and you know, their friends are from everywhere, and you can like have one person tweet because they absolutely love what you're doing, and that, you know, that's seen by everybody, and then they pick up on that, and it doesn't matter, as you absolutely rightly say, I mean, your show, you know, that relates to everybody, really. I think, you know, anyone who's ever been in a relationship or ever wanted to be in a relationship can watch your show and, you know, totally get from it what you're trying to get out there. And I mean, actually the same with what Tello does. I mean, there's some great series on there, and they're just stories, and they have women in them, and many of the women are lesbians, but you know,
they're also super hot. Just
they really are.
Yeah, they're good looking.
They're very good looking. They're very good looking women in her series, I have to say. Very good looking.
It's true.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
There is Ted's seal of approval. And I mean, and your series is just a really angry man.
Yeah.
and toilet jokes.
Yeah, basically.
Everyone loves toilet jokes. That's not niche.
So yeah, I mean, I think what the panel's saying is absolutely right. You can finding your niche is really important, because your niche is passionate and your niche will help sell you, but then they can push you to the wider audience as well. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to go for a niche audience, be happy with that niche audience. If your niche audience is the person in the plaid shirt with the work boots,
That's right.
Great.
That's huge. You guys, you should run with that. I mean, that's going to be huge.
that's my next web series.
I think-
Can I just say that?
I mean, that's free, everyone. That's free.
And yeah, I mean, so talking about like the wider, we talked a little bit about the wider industry. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about TV and film, because I think web is kind of the future. But for a moment, talking about TV and film industry, there's a lot of stuff at the moment about diversity schemes. Everyone's seen it in the press. It's like the really big thing at the moment, especially in the UK. For those of you in the US, I'm assuming it's the same, but in the UK, there's loads of press at the moment about diversity, and we're going to have diversity schemes of this, that, and the other. Do they work?
No. Because TV always seem to have one way they want to portray disabled people or LGBT people or black and ethnic people. Be a disabled person 1 minute, TV telling us we're villains. 1 minute we're superheroes. They want us all in one box. But that's not what it's like.
Yeah.
There is not a one-fits-all for people of a certain, quote, minority. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what Ted is saying. I think if the decision makers at the top are still have homogenized thinking, that it's going to be homogenized thinking. And I will say, we were having a conversation earlier about Shonda Rhimes and sort of the diversity that she has brought to her shows with ABC, with various African American female leads and strong female leads as well. But at the same time, they're still painting with very broad general strokes that everyone can kind of relate to, and that's what they're supposed to do. Like, that's what the networks are supposed to do. Like, you can find your niche if you want to, like, elsewhere. And so if those characters don't resonate with you, then you can go and find where the people who kind of speak to you are. But if those characters do speak to you, because I do think they try and say, what are those commonalities? Like, we all try and find love. We all want to solve a good mystery. So, you sort of just place the people that are the most compelling in there. But I think until the decision makers are different, you're still going to have kind of like this homogenized thinking that puts people in a box.
I think in terms of quotas, I'm a bit 50-50 with them, because on one side I feel that they're good because it's giving opportunities for filmmakers who aren't given a voice to be given a voice, to see if it does work. And if it does work, it kind of opens doors for other, ideas, other shows, other writers. In another sense, I'm not too sure about them, because it's whether the mainstream does stick to them, because it's okay to put out a quote there to say, this is how 20% of black and ethnic minority shows we're going to put out and we're going to write about, but is it actually going to be done? And if it's going to be done, who's actually writing the shows? Who's actually producing the shows? Because it's like you said, if the executive and the writers are all the same people, you're just going to get the same stories. So I feel like, once they put it out there, let's see the results, If they are using black and diverse and other minority writers and characters, then that's good. If they're not, then I don't think it's going to work. So I'm 50-50 with the quotas.
I mean, I'm kind of the same. I mean, we talked about this just before we came in, but there's been quite a lot about certain broadcasters in the UK having these diversity schemes, and I'm anecdotally aware of them doing one a few years ago where they really wanted to up their quota of black and ethnic minority people working behind the scenes as writers, producers, etc., etc. So they kind of trawled out, and the person they took in the end, it was a black guy, but he'd gone to Cambridge and his family were millionaires. And it's like, okay, he probably would have got there anyway. What about these people who don't have access to education? There's a huge swathe of people of all shapes, sizes, minorities, able-bodied, disabled, LGBT, straight, it doesn't matter, who are really disadvantaged by their socio-economic background. People who don't get the chance to finish school, people who don't go to college or university, people for whom film school, it's not even going to happen. And with tuition fees going up, and they're going up again, there is a lot of people out there who can't get education, can't go to university. Where do these guys come in? Why aren't we championing them? And when you look at that, you see as well that there's a lot of people from different groups who are in that segment of society. So I think if we can solve that, then we can probably solve the problems with all the other segments of society as well. If we can get to the people who don't have equality of opportunity now. And at the moment, it's great that they can say, yes, we have X number of shows and they're written by someone of colour, or X number of shows written by someone who's gay, but it's the same person over and over again. And the same with actors, it's the same 2 or 3 people. When you have disabled actors on television, you must see this. It's always the same person or the same 2 people.
Just expand the pool. Millions of talented disabled people out there. Likewise, there are some disabled people who won't make good actors. Pick them up their acting merits, not if they're not all tick the box. Here's a disabled person. That's my job done.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so we've been negative. So, how would you change things? What would you guys do? Just start with Abby.
Basically, on web or on television?
I guess in the wider industry, but and web as well, I think sort of bringing it all together.
I think web is a great platform. I think the only problem with web is funding. You always have to find funding and people to sponsor your shows. So that's the problem with web, but web gives you that space to be open, to be creative and write what you want to do. I think in television you need to get more diverse writers, whether they be disabled or LGBT or black and ethnic minorities. I think you need to get more writers, because that's where it starts. It starts with the writers who are writing their stories, who are writing their lives, and that's how you can make an authentic show, and you're not really playing too much with stereotypes, and you'll get more of a unique voice as well. So I think definitely getting more diverse writers into the mainstream is what will change the shows that we're actually seeing at the moment, because that's what they have in America. Talking about Shonda Rhimes, her being a black female, she's able to get different characters from different backgrounds and portray it in a positive light and not in a negative light. So I'll definitely say get more writers,
Yeah, I lived part-time in Los Angeles, and I was out there for 3 years. I worked in the studio industry, and I worked in for the Writers Guild, and I think I kind of left it because I thought, I don't want to play in that sandbox anymore. I want to make my own sandbox, and I want to make the things that I want to make. And even if I have to, when I started Tello, I worked a full-time job for 4 years, and I still kind of work full-time. I'm lucky now that I have a more flexible schedule, but I was, a 9-to-5er, and I did my art on the side, and I did that for like 6 years. But it was so important to me that I was doing what I wanted to do, what I thought was fun, and engaging with people who I thought were fun. So it was so frustrating that so many more other people had the ability to impact my life and their decisions. And so I decided to leave that. And I thought, it's gotten so much more accessible to make your stuff and put it up and let other people see it and say yes to it. And so I just sort of was like, I don't really care about those guys. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I'm lucky enough that I was persistent and stuck with it. And that's really what it is. Ted talked about sticking with it and persistence. That's what's unbelievably important and I think critical when you see some success. I totally screwed up like so many times early on. But thank goodness I learned from it and I stuck with it and I continued to make content, and I'm really lucky now that I have 2 full-time people with Tello. We have the web series, but at first, I was putting stuff on my credit card and hoping that we had other people who would maybe give me $3.99 for the month to kind of underwrite this. So I can't speak to mainstream television because I left it and was like, I'll see you guys later. Let me know when you figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, as I said before, sadly, I don't see mainstream TV becoming more diverse because it is all about the dollar. But I think the more the digital niche channels there are, the better. And also, if you are following the marketing model, although I hate it, if you have a small but dedicated audience, they'll probably be more likely to respond to your adverts than someone flicking around BBC, not BBC, ITV on Saturday night. As for niche web material, I think there needs to be more sites given subgenres, almost inventing subgenres, Cynic could be angry disabled.
That's a great subgenre.
LGBT.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted. Yeah. With moose hats.
That's so important.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so any questions or comments from the audience? I'm going to keep asking you guys if there's anything that you want to say. No? Oh, yes, please.
Okay, so I'm a writer and director. So maybe my question is how do you foresee the niche market as a black female UK writer and director? Because I know no others.
All right. I feel that in terms of that market is very small in the UK. I know a lot of other black female writers and directors that I speak to directly, and we pass information around, for example, for events like this and other events, we'll say this is what's happening. But I feel that using the web is to use it as your benefit. So create your own stuff, go out there, create your own story, because if more of us are doing that, then we are creating a platform, but also we're making a noise for other people to pay attention as well. So I feel like the market is very small, because I was having this conversation with my director saying that there isn't a lot of female directors in general, let alone black female directors. So to hear that you're a black female director, that's a good thing. So it's just about creating your own work and just keep putting it out there, because I'm sure a lot of people want to hear your story as well. And the more you take risk, at first I was saying there is a bit of lack of funding when you first start, because I know for myself as well and my production company, we came up with the funds ourselves. So at first it is hard, but once you put your work out there and you do target that niche and people support you, things will get better. But you need to carry on to create that market, because even though there isn't one now, if you stop, there isn't going to be one. So you have to carry on and push through, and that will create eventually a market, and there'll be more female directors following your footsteps. So yeah.
So the first show I did was an LGBT show, and it's on AfterEllen.com, which is a female LGBT niche blog, now part of Logo Network for AfterEllen.com. But it launched in 2008, and obviously as a producer we're tweeting it out and everything. And the one thing I didn't sign up for that I realized was then becoming the kind of public face of, you know, kind of professional LGBT in the space. Is just like, if you want the LGBT person on your panel, this is the person. So my question is, do you find a lot of pressure on yourselves as being like the person, you know, like the lesbian that we're going to put on the thing, you know, the disabled person, the, you know, first kind of black female director, in terms of like representing effectively everyone else in the the niche that you're operating in, and or everyone that will come like after you?
Yeah. Ted, do you want to talk about lesbians?
Do you really want me to?
No. I know Ted and I were talking about our taste in women, and luckily it's different, so we're not competing with each other, so it's good. He likes a good brunette, I like a good blonde, so we're okay. I know so much about lesbians. No, I'm just kidding. And I'm able to speak for everyone. No, I think it's just important that there's a voice, right? Like if it's mine, if it's yours, it's just important that there's at least someone out there shouting. I mean, like you talked about, like not finding your representation. Well, like here, like you guys can now talk and share and collaborate and find, like, you can find your tribe, right? Like that's the super important thing. And, you know, 5% of the people, of the subscribers on Tello are straight men. Like, that's really interesting. Like and we don't have like porn or like a lot of sex on our site. So they're actually watching for the stories and for the rich characters that we provide. So I think it's important to be able to connect with people who have similar experiences. And so if you happen to be that voice at that time, thank God there's a voice. Like there has to be someone shouting, "We are here." And, you know, so I while on this panel I am sort of like the LGBT representative, I'm just glad that there is someone that is in this slot. It could have been you, it could have been, you know, you from Planet London. Like just have someone here that's talking about it.
Yeah, as I said before, no, a lot of disabled people don't want me as a representative. But I think just to have someone talking, that most of the blue and black things I say are in character, I don't really genuinely mean that. Well, maybe some of them just to have someone being themselves, even if it's not exactly what everyone else of that category thinks. I think that's the main thing. Get out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's just about definitely just having a voice. And I think for me, when I first started, I just wanted to get out there. I didn't see myself as being a voice. I didn't see myself representing a group of females. It was just something that I loved doing. I loved writing. I loved producing. I loved directing. So I just went out there. So when people were contacting me, I started seeing, okay, so they want to hear our voice, they want to hear our stories, and I have been trying to get, like I said, there is a small community of young black female writers and directors, so I'm always trying to get in touch with everyone to see what everyone is doing and supporting other people's work. So I think it's just important that we do have a voice and someone is representing us, and it could be anyone. I don't think I'm a voice, I'm just doing what I love, so it could be anyone. So yeah.
And I think that's where Twitter and stuff comes in
Yeah.
really handy as well, because you can connect with people. I mean, anyone on here who isn't on Twitter, isn't using it a lot, I would really recommend you use it, because
Yeah.
you can get a network. It's an easy way to keep in touch with people, and you
Yeah.
can support each other. So, you know, like now we're connected, and so
Yeah.
when you're doing things, I'm going to be tweeting about them. When I'm doing things, you'll be tweeting. And the same
Yeah.
with Christin and Ted. We'll all be
Yeah.
like tweeting each other's work and supporting each other, and you're just growing your network.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
That way, so.
Again, when I started, I was just writing a story from my perspective. And within my show, again, we have Asian characters, we have Caucasian characters. So I wasn't trying to target different niches or different people. That was just my perspective, my story. I mean, at the moment, apart from America shows, there's no shows in the UK that really, really targets everyone. So I can't really give you feedback on that. You know, if it is your story and you've got a story to put out there, I'll say give it a go. But I can't really comment on that because I don't see my show as being a niche. I just see it as being my story. So
I only make things for lesbians. Because I think it's important to have that demographic represented, and that's the perspective that that I navigate life. I navigate life with a very specific lens, and that is the lens of a lesbian. Which you probably can't relate to, and which you probably can't relate to. And I can't relate to having to navigate life as, you know, someone who is disabled or an African American woman. We have things in common. Like if you watch a lot of our shows, it's about finding love. That's something that everyone's sort of looking for, finding love, or, you know, having your parents like love you and support you. That's a pretty common theme. But if I go at a project, it's specifically for the lesbian audience, and if someone says yes to it who's not lesbian, fantastic.
Yeah.
But I know, and I also know where that audience is. And so I know like who I need to get to review it. I know the bloggers who blog about lesbian content, who have lesbian followings. Those kinds of things are important as well. After Ellen was mentioned, After Ellen is a very important site to us because lots of lesbians visit After Ellen and they review our projects. Planet London is another really important site for us because it's for lesbians in the London area. To get them to cover us is very important because lesbians go to that site. So if I try and make something for everyone, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, who am I gonna try and get to cover that? So it's really far more difficult sometimes if it's like, this is for everyone, but then no one covers you because they don't know what it's about and you don't have, the marketing money behind like CBS, ABC, Netflix, those kinds of groups have. So I'm sorry, you might really love my content, but I really don't care if you do or not because you're not a lesbian.
It depends what niche you're talking about. No, I've got no desire to write any comedy that isn't targeted at those people who like dark but just the right side of okay kind of humour, because that's my thing. I'd say that's my main voice into the comedy world. But yes, of course I want to make things for non-disabled audience. I've always said what I do. Even though I talk a lot about disability, because it's there, I can't avoid it. It's the elephant in the room. If you walk into a room with a big elephant and say nothing, everyone gets uncomfortable. Yeah. But I don't think what I do is necessarily for a disabled audience.
No, yeah. And I think doing threesome as well, certainly when I started with threesome, a lot of our marketing was targeted at the gay audience, and we were very, very grateful. We had a lot of support from people like Gay Times, Boys Magazine out in the UK. All of those were really supportive of us and still are. But as it grew, it went. it kind of took in that audience, but then it grew, and we now, I think we kind of dual market in that we market a lot to the women's market, because we know our audience is women sort of 30 to 55, we know that, and we know we have a big audience of gay men as well, so we market to two audiences. But we've had coverage sort of from BBC and in The Guardian, Observer. I mean, we've kind of gone mainstream. But I wasn't necessarily, I was writing that from sort of experiences and things, and I wasn't necessarily saying I'm writing this for a gay audience, or I'm writing this. I suppose I was more conscious of writing it for women because I'm a woman, and I'm writing it, as you said. I can only really sort of look at it from my perspective. But it was, I think it was it was nice to see that it could go beyond just those groups of people, although they are our major audience, and it would be daft to neglect them or not accept that. But yeah, I think it has gone forward.
I do want to add one more thing about, and like I said, like we have a laser focus of lesbians, because if you said this is great content, and your social network is people who are, I can't really see you, so I'm just going to pretend that you're a straight guy. So if your social network is a straight guy and you're like, oh my gosh, this lesbian show is amazing, that does me no good, because the likelihood that one of your straight male friends is going to subscribe to us is much less likely. Whereas if I get someone from Planet London to say this is an amazing thing, those lesbians are going to go, oh, Planet London says this is amazing. I've liked other things that Planet London has done. Let me go and click that. So that's why we're not going for mainstream, because the likelihood that people will pay me for that kind of very niche content is much less likely than if I can get someone that they trust to say, oh, this person says this is good. They've said other things are good that I've liked. I'm going to pay for this.
Yeah, it's kind of knowing your audience, isn't it? Where your audience is, and trying to reach that audience.
I don't think about 95% of the world most of the time.
I think my group is the angry black woman. I think that's the stereotype that's been going on for years, and I think Shonda Rhimes just had it recently as well.
She did.
Yeah. In the New York Times, they called her an angry black woman.
Or, no, these are Wall Street Journal.
Yeah. And that was quite funny, because all her shows she doesn't portray that in her characters. So that's a stereotype that I've seen growing up since I've grown up. Basically, it's always been that portrayal. And I think for my characters in my shows, we're more diverse. So you have funny characters, you might have a female because she's upset, and she's not upset because she's a black female, she's upset because of her situation or her relationship might be going wrong. But I think the main character, the lead character, she's not an angry black female. So I think, again, like I said, it was my perspective and my story. That's why it's definitely important to write your story out there, because you can promote it in a way you want to promote it, and it's your story, so it's your voice. So I could literally change that stereotype of the angry black female and show people that we're not all angry and upset and we hate the world. And I feel like, and that's what we've been getting a lot of the feedback was like, wow, I haven't seen characters like this being portrayed in this way. And people like, a lot of feedback even from our audience in America was saying, we didn't know you had a black audience like that in the UK. We didn't know black people were like that in the UK, so it's just like, how did you think we were? So, I was a bit confused. So, so it's very important for me to have my story out there to kind of show that, we are, we're all different. We are happy people as well. So that's a stereotype that I've been erasing in my writing. So, yeah.
I'm really glad to know there's black women in the UK. Blew my mind.
Sub-niche.
A sub-niche, yeah. I think the one that kind of like can drive me a little crazy is the one, like the lesbian who experimented in college. And then like obviously has like then like goes, see, like look, she's like freaking out, like because I think like there's, obviously everyone's on a spectrum, but I think there's like either like the predatory lesbian who's like gonna change all the straight chicks or like get the straight girls, or there's the like, oh, I experimented in college and I'm not really gay anymore kind of person.
I'm disabled, so I have to know and get on with everyone who also has a disability. Oh, Paul, no, my name's Ted. Paul, no, your name's Paul. No, Paul's so like you. Is he? How? Well, yes, your disability. Okay. Does he like the kind of music I like? No. Does he like the comedy I like? No. Then we're not that similar.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's like the working class woman. Because, you know, you watch a drama and you've got your middle class women who live in a nice house and, you know, shop in Waitrose and do all those things. And you get the working class woman and here she comes and she's got hoop earrings and she's got her hair straight back. I mean, I apologise to anyone in the audience who has hoop earrings. That's fine, by the way. That's a fine fashion choice, but it's not me.
I'm glad you left your
I grew up on a council estate, you know, and we weren't all like that. Some of us did shop in Waitrose and cook, and we don't go to Iceland and buy, you know, like horse meat, lasagna and all of that stuff. And it just really pisses me off because anything you watch on TV, generally, the working class characters, you know, you can tell them a mile off. They're coming along, they've got their can of special brew and everything else. It's not like that, you know, we're not all like that. So, yeah, I think we all see things through our own perception, and that's my pet peeve when they do that, because there's a whole spectrum of things you can look at. So
I think no one's willing to put it out there because they believe there isn't a big enough audience for it. And again, and like Ted said, it's all about advertisement, you know, how much money they can make from a show, and it all comes down to money. And so if they believe that, you know, there's not a big enough audience out there, they're not going to do it. They're not even going to try or experiment. Or if they are going to do it, it's going to be played on stereotypes, just the usual stuff. So
Here's what I will say. I think network TV is, and I'm speaking from an American perspective, so I don't know like a lot of what like BBC or ITV does, but from an American perspective, I think they're really slow to change. But if you look at Netflix and you look at Orange is the New Black, there's amazing diversity in that show, and that show has actually done better on Netflix than House of Cards. And so there's something that people are saying yes to there. And then the Amazon show, the one about Transparent got a full series from them with like real kind of like what we call TV money in the States, and that's a very niche market with storytelling. And I'm watching my Twitter feed and people are like, you know, Transparent is fantastic, watch it. So I think these companies like Netflix and Amazon and, you know, Hulu's still kind of the, like, you know, 18 to 35 guy market who hasn't moved over yet. But I think you're going to see some network money going towards niche audiences like that because of the success of Orange is the New Black and potentially because of the success of Transparent.
Yes, exactly. I think the big guys are scared of diversity because it might mean lower viewer figures, but our job to prove to them it doesn't necessarily mean lower viewer figures, or even if it does, it means those viewers will be so much more focused, and one viewer will be worth 100 casual BBC One 9 o'clock on a Saturday night viewer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think going back exactly to kind of what you said, what you all said actually, is, you know, the truth of the matter is in the UK, I can't really speak for the US, but I think it's the same. The commissioners are generally white middle-class men, straight white middle-class men, and often, you know, able-bodied as well. And they are the ones that are making all the decisions, and everything is coming through their perspective. And until that changes, I think that's where the issue is. However, I think that's what's really positive about what we're doing, because we're creating a market for all this other content, and they can't ignore it, and they won't ignore it, because they know when it's coming, they can see where their audiences are going, they see who's watching these things. They can't ignore that forever, they can ignore it for a while, but all of the big networks in the UK, all the big channels are waking up to the web. They're all starting to employ people to look at web content, work on web content, launch their own web channels. They all know it's coming. So it's a very positive thing, I think, and it's a shift that will change. But I would say at the moment, I don't think it's the audience's fault. I don't think it's the creator's fault. I think it's down to who's doing the commissioning. And also, just to pick up a bit on what Ted just said about people who would watch these shows, I personally, this is my own personal view, is that the BBC is a public broadcaster. Therefore, I think the BBC should be making shows that maybe won't get massive viewer figures, but are for certain people in society and do feature certain people in society. That's kind of their job. That's kind of what they're there for. I mean, they play songs of praise. You know, someone's watching that. So why aren't we having series, you know, with a disabled person in the lead role? Or why aren't we having series where maybe, you know, the whole cast is an ethnic minority? That's fine. You know, why don't we do that? Why don't we give people credit? Why don't we credit our audience with a little bit of intelligence? They might actually want to watch something that's outside of their experience and get to know it, and they might like it. So, okay, so just quickly, what would your advice be to people who want to get their work out there, people who've seen this and think, yeah, I want to get my work represented? What would you say they should do?
I just say keep at it. Like, at the moment, I can't lie. Cynic could have better viewing figures than it has, but one of the reasons I hear is to raise my profile. Stick at it, don't give up. Eventually, the audience you want will come, and if you change yourself too much to make yourself mainstream, you won't be as good, because that's not what you do.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say the first thing is, if you feel like your story is mainstream but your story is important to you, like, you have to make that. Like, you have to do what you're going to find fun and interesting. But I would also say you have some kind of niche. And the best way to grow and build your audience is to figure out who's going to say yes to your project. And there's a term that Seth Golden used, who's is an American marketer, and he talked about finding your tribe. And if you can get 1,000 people to say yes to your project, or say yes to you as a filmmaker or a creator, you can start finding your tribe, and then you can start monetizing your projects. If you can get a base of 1,000 people to follow you, or subscribe to your channel or watch, the likelihood that you can do a crowdfunding campaign and raise a little bit of money on top of that to pay for your future projects is much greater. And so I would say, do what you can to find your niche. If you whatever it is that you love, there's probably a blogger, there's probably a community, there's a Facebook page, there's a group out there, and let them know that you're there, and let you know that you're making content for them, and let them know that that's something that you care about, so that you can start developing that little core group. If you sort of say, like, my project is for everyone, then you don't really have a focus. Like, you have to have, with especially web series, but any content, you have to have a laser-like focus to know, who's going to say yes to your project. Producing Juliet, which Rochelle does, started off as an LGBT project, specifically for lesbians, but then she realized, so that was their project, that was their focus, that was their niche, and then they realized, oh my gosh, this also would resonate with theater people. So then they reached out to that secondary niche, and then they had laser-like focus on that niche, which brought them additional people. So there are different people that are going to say yes to your project, and find out who that is, find your tribe, and I think what Ted said too, persistence. You have got to stick with it. Like, I've been working on Tello for 6 years, and we're just now at the point where we're figuring out monetization. So it takes a while, but if you persist, you're going to win in the end.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I believe that before you start to do your web series, make sure you're writing something that you believe in. It's very important that you believe in your own work, because once you get the feedback, and if people are giving you negative feedback, that could literally just knock you off course. So make sure you believe in your story and you stick at it. You get yourself a really good cast who also believes in your story, because with my show, I am my target audience. So I'm writing for me and my friends, and everyone else who's watching the show, that's just a bonus. And the fact that everyone else loves the show because they can relate to the issues in the show, that's a big bonus. But make sure you believe in what you write in, you get yourself a good production company who also believes in your story, and a good cast, because once you have that will set the tone for you. And again, it's sticking at it as well, because our first episode was released 3 years ago, and within this year I'm starting to see the real positive outcome of that.
Yeah.
So it does take time, and your audience will build up within time, but stick at it and believe in what you're writing and what you're doing. So yeah, that's my advice.
Any last questions from the audience? No? Guys, anything else you wanted to add? No? Okay, I think that's a really good place to wrap up then. Can you please thank our panel?
Very good.